Plane crashes, dozens dead. No answers, except one. Every single time an airplane goes down, there's one piece of debris that always seems to survive: the black box. But have you ever wondered why it is designed to be so indestructible, or what it actually does? Well, today on the Infographics Show, we uncover how the black box survives fire, water, and impact to expose the truth behind the world's deadliest air disasters. They don't call it the black box for nothing. While the name might suggest otherwise, these crucial pieces of equipment aren't actually black at all. In fact, they're bright orange, which makes them much easier to spot in the wreckage. The reason for their mysterious moniker is because while they are a vital part of any modern aircraft, they are rarely ever seen by anyone other than engineers and investigators. And that's not just because of where they're placed inside the plane, it's also due to how well they're made. When it comes to these unbreakable boxes, your first thought might be that they're made of metal or some other durable material. But you'd be wrong. They're actually made of a type of plastic called Lexan, the same stuff bulletproof glass is made of. What's more, they're built with a tough outer shell and filled with foam to protect the sensitive recording equipment within. The result is a device that can survive a 30-foot fall, 1200 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures, and even explosions. But how do they work, and what exactly do they do? Well, let's start at the beginning. So the black box is essentially an indestructible flight recorder and cockpit voice recorder combined into one. Its job is to record all conversations and sounds happening inside the cockpit, along with various technical data about the plane itself. That includes things like speed, altitude, direction, as well as when certain switches are engaged and what the pilots are saying. All this information is recorded on a circular loop, meaning once it reaches the end, it starts over again, erasing the oldest data to make room for the newest. Now you might be wondering why all that data needs to be stored on a loop. Why not just keep adding new data to an endless list? Well, that's a fair question, but it actually makes sense when you consider the context. Airplane crashes tend to happen very suddenly and unexpectedly. And when they do, investigators don't know what happened before the crash. They only have the black box data from the moments leading up to it. By storing the data on a loop, the black box ensures that the most relevant information is the most recent. The exact contents of a black box will vary depending on the type of aircraft. Commercial airplanes, for example, have much stricter requirements than general aviation planes. But all of them will include the basic information needed to understand what happened before a crash. Now we know that black boxes are built to withstand almost anything, but that doesn't mean they can survive every accident. In some cases, the recording devices inside have been damaged, either due to faulty manufacturing or improper installation. In others, they've simply been destroyed in the chaos of a crash. But those are rare exceptions, not the rule. In the majority of cases, the black box manages to survive, which is great news for investigators. But it does present another problem. You see, the recordings are made to last as long as possible, but eventually the batteries die. In the past, this hasn't been too much of a problem since data was stored on magnetic tape, which could last for decades. But modern black boxes store their recordings digitally, which requires much less physical space, but also means the data disappears after a few years when the battery dies. This isn't as much of a problem as it seems, however, because digital storage has some unique advantages. Unlike analog tape, digital data can be accessed in a much more precise way. It can also be easily converted into different formats, which allows investigators to use computers to analyze the data in real time instead of having to listen through hours of recordings. Now, you might be wondering why we even need the black box in the first place. After all, surely there are other ways to find out what went wrong in a crash. And you wouldn't be wrong. There are, but they aren't nearly as useful. Most accidents, for example, involve some kind of mechanical failure, and without the right tools, it can be almost impossible to figure out why that failure occurred. A black box, however, can reveal precisely what happened and when, allowing engineers to design better, safer planes for everyone. Take, for example, the crash of United Airlines Flight 1173. On February 9, 1972, a Boeing 737 was making a routine flight from Denver to Portland when it lost power to its auxiliary hydraulic system. This is the system that controls things like spoilers and the elevator trim, which helps balance the plane during flight. With this vital system offline, the crew struggled to control the aircraft. And when it became clear they couldn't, they put out a mayday and prepared to land in an open field near the town of Brush, Colorado. Unfortunately, the pilot misjudged their descent, and the plane ended up crashing into a house, killing 43 people. The accident was a mystery for a long time, but thanks to the black box, investigators were able to figure out what had gone wrong. They discovered that the source of the problem was a contaminated O-ring seal that allowed hydraulic fluid to leak out of the system. They were then able to replace the part and continue testing. It was thanks to this discovery that the FAA and Boeing issued new guidelines regarding hydraulic system reliability, preventing similar accidents in the future. It's important to note, though, that while the black box helped identify the cause of the crash, it wasn't solely responsible. Crash investigations require the expertise of highly trained professionals who can interpret the raw data and turn it into actionable information. But without the black box, their job would be much more difficult. Take, for example, the crash of Avianca Flight 203. On December 29, 1990, an Avianca Boeing 707 was making its way from Bogota, Colombia, to New York City when it ran out of fuel and crashed into a neighborhood in Queens, killing 77 people. When investigators examined the wreck, they were shocked to discover that the plane had been experiencing intermittent electrical problems for days before the crash. These problems had been logged by the flight crew, but no one seemed to know what caused them. That's where the black box came in. Investigators were able to use it to track the history of the electrical problems, eventually discovering that it was due to a broken circuit breaker. What's more, they found that the crew had actually fixed the issue briefly on one occasion, but it broke again later on. Thanks to the black box, investigators were able to implement new safety measures that prevented a similar accident from happening again. Of course, not all crashes occur because of mechanical failure. Sometimes human error plays a role too. Take, for example, the crash of Egypt Air Flight 990. On October 1999, a Boeing 767 was flying from New York to Cairo when it suddenly began to descend. The pilot struggled to regain control, but the plane eventually hit the water off the coast of Nantucket Island, killing all 217 people on board. Investigators immediately suspected pilot error, but they needed proof. And that's where the black box came in. The cockpit recordings revealed that the first officer had somehow disconnected the autopilot system and turned the plane onto a heading that was certain to lead them into the water, but it didn't explain why. As it turned out, the pilots had been engaging in some light-hearted banter right before the crash, and investigators believed that the first officer, who was relatively new to the airline, was trying to impress his boss by showing off his flying skills. Whatever the reason, the black box was able to provide the evidence needed to confirm it. As you can see, the black box is an indispensable part of any modern aircraft. Without it, investigators would be left in the dark about what really causes deadly crashes. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the actual color of the black box. Surely it must be black if it's called the black box, right? Well, yes it is. The outside of the box is painted black, but that's for a specific purpose. It's to absorb heat and prevent the box from getting too hot in direct sunlight. The actual color of the box is orange, which makes it easy to spot against a background of gray metal and dirt. So the next time you watch a movie about a plane crash, pay close attention to the wreckage. Chances are there'll be a bright orange box amidst the debris, silently offering clues to one of the world's deadliest mysteries. Now, speaking of plane crashes, check out this video on the world's most deadliest plane crash, or watch this video instead.